Hello everyone, welcome to the episode 99 of SoLeadSaturday. Our today's guest, Shelly Najjar, is a nutrition mindset coach, dietitian, and certified intuitive eating counselor. She has helped hundreds of people to let go of the shoulds of eating so they can enjoy their food, improve their health, and fully live their lives. She owns Confident Nutrition, where she helps women transform their personal and professional lives through personalized nutrition and mindset change. Outside of work, she loves traveling, eating amazing foods, writing, dancing, and spending time with a good book. Her encouraging and practical approach will be valuable for our Solid Saturday audience, and I'm hoping that you would be interested to listen from her more. So let's just welcome her and hear more about her career journey. How did she find her area of interest and managing to do that? Hey, hi Shelly. Very happy to have you on the show and really appreciate all your time and consideration being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Shelly.
Thank you so much. This is, as I mentioned right earlier as well, that this is one of the areas we will definitely look forward to cover as a part of this podcast. I think being in the pandemic, people became a lot more health conscious and they're taking care of their diet and the nutrition. So definitely we are looking forward to this episode and hope audience will get a lot of value add from this episode. So to begin with, we have a very generic segment, which is more about how one person can find their passion or the interest in particular area. So how did you find your areas of interest, that too in coaching and that too specifically in nutrition and diet kind of a field, and what motivates you where you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's kind of a back and forth story, I guess, between what got me interested in nutrition and then what got me interested in coaching. And so it started in 8th grade. I was doing a science fair project for my school, and the topic was around nutrition. And I really, really loved what I was learning. It was connected to everything. I hadn't learned much about it at that time. So I got really excited about, this new thing that seemed like it was connected to basically all of life. And so I was like, I am going to be a dietitian. And I job shadowed some, 3 or 4 dietitians, and talked to them about what did they like, what did they not like. And then I actually got to college and found out that, there was a bunch of things that kind of led to this point, but through undergraduate and graduate university, I got kind of burnt out on nutrition in the way that it was taught. So it was taught as a bunch of rules, and for sure this works for everybody, and then if it doesn't, it must be the person's fault, not maybe we didn't quite get the advice correct, right? And so I got really burnt out on that, and I worked in a hospital for a little bit, and I think that was kind of the tipping point where I was like, I love the helping people through things, but I feel like the way that I was taught to do it was actually more harmful in the long run than helpful. And so I was like, I want to help people feel like they are set up for success, not like we're just setting them up for failure and then blaming them for it. So I decided to just look at the coaching aspect of it, like behavior change, goal achievement, that kind of thing. And so I really got into the coaching aspect and kind of put nutrition aside for about a couple of years. And then after I got into the coaching and I was helping people, and they found out more that I was a dietitian and they wanted to do health things. And I was like, well, I don't really want to do health things, but I had to go back and forth. How do I do this? Because I know I can still help people, right? And I can still help people in nutrition. So how do I do it in a way that feels good and feels helpful and is actually helping people make progress? And so what took me back to nutrition was really learning about a process called intuitive eating. And so I ended up getting another certification in this process. And that really helped me feel like, oh, I'm connecting to what works for that person individually, because it's using our own body's cues, each person's body's cues, to figure out what, when, and how much to eat, and combining that with what do we know about nutrition science and population data, and using that instead of saying, that we're going to use like this generic rule for everybody and just try to fit the person into it. That, you know, it's much more personalized this way, and way less restrictive and controlled.
Wow.
So yeah, that's kind of like that, you know, it's like going back and forth.
Yeah, and this is the best, I think, the way of, you know, finding out your area of interest. The way you mentioned a couple of things, which were like, you know, connecting with the like-minded people who are already practicing in the same area, then taking that proper route as well, like, you know, doing the proper certifications so that you have that added to your name, and then people can approach you, and provided plus you can get the practical experience to understand different body types, to come up with proper nutrition and the diet plan for them. So definitely this is like a proper approach, I guess. And thank you so much for sharing. Moving towards our next segment is more or about questions from the audience. And the first question that we have is, what to do so you feel more in control and control any food cravings? Or there is one more question that I have is, exercise over diet, what do you think is more important?
Yeah, those are really very common questions. I'm going to take the second one first. So of the question of which is more important, exercise or what we eat, I would actually say neither. They're both important for our health, right? They're both important. We need to move our bodies and we need to nourish our bodies. I think that the focus sometimes, especially in certain cultures, I live in the US, in our culture here, I think in general, we have kind of a obsessive tendency around the concepts of exercise and nutrition and eating healthy and things like that. And so it becomes this big burden where people don't want to do either of them. And they still feel like they should, but they don't want to, or they can't keep it up. And so sometimes just saying like, you know what, they're both important, and it's whichever one is going to, you know, nourish you best right now. Let's start there with something really, really small, right? And not having this expectation that we have to move every day, or, you know, run if we hate running, or eat kale if we hate kale. Like there's ways of finding things that feel good in our bodies, and can still be nourishing. And so I like to help people find that balance. And I think really they're both important, but more than just saying that they're important, holding that in a gentle sort of way is even more important, because it's really about how do we think about these things that will then impact what do we do about them, right? And then I think that kind of goes to the first piece of that question is like, what do we do when we feel out of control around our food, right? Very anti-intuitively, the answer that I would give is to ease up on the sense of control. If you want to feel more controlled around your food, try not to control your food as much. The reason for that is really like, okay, if we think about, try not to think about your phone right now. What did you just think about?
So it is more or like, you know, I was thinking about the situation, like, you know, because today I had like extremely craving for like, you know, something sweet, like a dessert thing. So I was thinking that, you know, the way you are mentioning that, you know, don't control it, but how do you see that actually? So if you are eating sugary food.
So it's kind of like if you were thinking of that sweet craving, and cravings are interesting because they can be generated from a lot of different reasons. But let's just simplify it and say, if we were thinking of that sweet craving and we decide to fight it, and we say, no, I don't want to eat sweets, or I will just have a tiny bit of sweet and then nothing after this, and I have to eat very healthy after because I ate the sweet. Okay, so then the next time, oh well, I didn't have it the last time, maybe I can have a little bit now. You keep pushing that off. It's going to become some time when you're going to eat the sweets, and you're going to eat a lot of them, right? And it's just going to feel so out of control because this is the one and only time that you're allowing yourself to have sweets, and you're going to be better about it next time. And you know, I'll eat healthy after this. Like, oh, I already ate one, maybe just one more. Oh, no, I ate two. Like, okay, well, I'll just start over tomorrow. And then you just keep eating them, right? And it's not about what is actually satisfying and what is like enjoyable just now, like as you eat it, but also what is it going to make you feel like after like 2 hours later or the next morning, like, are you going to have a really big headache or stomach ache? Or is your energy going to like spike and then crash? Like, what are you going to be feeling? It's probably not the most satisfying experience. But if you had backed up and you said instead, okay, instead of trying to control this whole situation, I am just going to say, is this the most satisfying? What would be the most satisfying? And if I think it might be eating something sweet, I'll say, okay, what would I like to eat? And I go and eat the little bit of sweet that I feel like would be satisfying both now and after I eat. And that way it just eases up because I can have it whenever I want to. So it's not this big thing where I have to start using willpower and energy. It's kind of like this idea where if I said, don't think about your cell phone, or, what did you instantly think about now?
Instantly, I think about the thing like, when you mentioned it, actually,
Right.
one thing I think it works with food cravings, I guess, as you mentioned that, small quantity, eat the small quantity. Or most of the times what I do is whenever I feel like, cravings about any kind of a food, I discuss or see the pictures for some time. And then, I control my cravings actually. So I just don't go and just eat it or something like that. I just try to control it first from my side. So if I have like a lot of cravings for the food, which is more or like, no, I would like to eat more like a sweet, definitely it is not good, right? And as you mentioned as well, that if you keep eating it, it is not healthy at all. Or if you control it also completely, it is not healthy either, because if you are habitual to certain habits from the upbringing side of it, like, if you have the habit of having the early morning tea or coffee, so you just don't go and suddenly stop it. You can just reduce the quantity that you drink. So
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessary to cut out all these things, right?
yeah,
I think that's the thing that catches a lot of people by
yeah,
surprise about this technique, is that it's not about good and bad foods. It's not
yes,
about you are morally evil because you ate sugar.
mm,
It's neutral,
yeah,
right? Eating sugar, eating something sweet, enjoying it, enjoying that cultural practice, enjoying your family history, enjoying these things, enjoying life and food as a part of life is good, is healthy, is a
yeah,
part of our well-being, right? It doesn't have to be, oh, I am, everything about this is now suddenly bad or good. Like, no, it's just
yeah,
it's just
mhm,
food, right?
mm,
It's just food.
yeah,
Let's
yeah,
just
yeah.
make it food
That's
again, right? It's not the biggest thing in the
yeah,
world, and
that's
it's
why I also don't
okay.
stop it actually. But definitely the way you are mentioning
Yeah.
those areas, the way you are mentioning that definitely works actually. Those are the practical ways that, reduce the quantity, or, have a little bit of it and then compensate with the more healthy food afterwards.
Yeah,
So
and
those
it's really, it's
definitely
not
more
about
practical
like
ways. Yeah,
the going back and forth. Like, you don't have to earn it. You don't have
yeah,
to compensate, actually,
yeah.
right? Like, if we're truly learning how to listen to our bodies, and I have a whole process that I take people through for this. If we're truly listening to that, then it doesn't, like, we don't have to limit or make up for it or compensate or anything like that. We can just enjoy it in the moment and
Mm-hmm.
then enjoy the next moment. And we don't have to keep track of our food, and we don't have
Yeah.
to keep, fighting it and using willpower. That was the idea that I'm saying about, like, you mentioned, like, as soon as I said not to think about the phone, you thought about the phone.
Yeah.
Just because I set up that rule, now we're thinking about the phone that we were never thinking about in the first place.
Yeah.
So if I said, hey, let's not, oh, we have to limit our sugar, instantly now we're using energy to think about not eating too much sugar, when
Mm.
we previously were just using the energy for something else. And when we're thinking about living our lives and leading people in our best way, if we're constantly sucking down our energy and our
Mm.
willpower and our decision making skills by focusing on things that never needed to be focused on in the first place,
Mm.
it's holding us back from being the leader that we want to be.
Yep. That's true. And one more point, actually, the way you mentioned, I just remembered one speaker actually who was talking about how our brain functions. So in that, he mentioned that, our brain never listens to what we are saying. So if I say that, don't imagine, something, your brain is going to imagine it. So if you say something which starts with don't do this, don't do that, your brain is definitely going to think about it. So so instead of saying don't, it is more like, negation. It's more about talking in a way that your brain is not going to contradict that. So this is like how the human brain works as well. Like, when you say not to do, it tries to do and imagine. So
Mhm.
so that is something I think it's very important as well to understand how it is going to function. And the way you are mentioning, those are very, very, very practical ways actually, because I already applied those, and then definitely those are like kind of a practical ways to look into it when you have the food cravings. So thank you so much for sharing. And one more question that we have is how to grow your kitchen confidence so you can care for yourself and loved ones through food.
Yeah, this is a really important one, I think,
Yeah.
because it's so it's so built up now that we have access to all these cooking shows and Instagram and Pinterest, all these different food pictures, right? We see
Mm-hmm.
this amazing looking food. We see these chefs that are whipping out things that you would only imagine, like, in your dreams, and they do it in like 10 minutes or less with, half the ingredients missing. And it's such a barrier to people feeling like they can cook too, or maybe they only know like the 3 meals that they go to and they're really bored. So what I would say is practice, just keep practicing. And it doesn't have to be really hard things that you're practicing. It can be because, all food can fit. So we can ease up on the expectation that it has to look amazing the first time you try it, because those chefs, they didn't get that way instantly. Like the first time they walked into a kitchen, they couldn't do those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of practice. It's a matter of sometimes, the food doesn't taste good. And then what do we do about that? We learn either how to change it, or we learn we don't actually like that food. So we're going to cook something entirely different. It's a process of learning and experimenting and easing up that expectation for ourselves about what is our food going to look like the first time we make something. It's not going to look like Instagram, right? It's not going to
Yeah.
look like this amazing photo journal of food. It's just like, it's just food, it's just cooking. And I think
That's
when
true.
you bring it, especially when you're talking about loved ones, like if you cook a meal, kind of that idea, like if you cook it with heart, right? Like you cook it with love, it's going to be received well. They're not going to care,
Yeah.
that it's not the chef's amazing thing. It's a family meal. It's a meal made with love. And if we focus on that piece, then I think that can ease up the expectation.
Yeah, that's true. That's why, moms are more valuable, because the way they cook is always with the love. So they never think how many people are there and how many people, guests are coming at home or something like that, because they cook the food with a lot of love, and it always turns out good in taste.
Mm-hmm.
Versus when we think about today's generation, we are a lot more busy, right? So we don't really enjoy it. It's more or like order it online and get it done,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of a thing. So because we want the things quick, and we don't want to spend a lot of time in cooking. But cooking is definitely something like a passion, as well as it is something that if you do by liking, then you never get tired of. But if you don't like to cook, then it's very hard to get that habit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And finding little tricks and tips that you can use to speed up that process so you're not in the kitchen as long if you don't like being
Yeah.
in the kitchen. Learning some of those basic cooking skills so that you can go through things faster and feel more confident. um, Having somebody help you out with some tips, or like just learning a set of things so you don't have to do the decision making part of it, because some people, they don't mind the cooking necessarily, but they don't like the choosing what to make.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of different
Yeah.
ways to
There are
come
a lot
at
of.
it, depending on like which part is the biggest barrier.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And then there is always thing like, nowadays, if you think about it, cooking is like a must thing. Like, you have to learn it. If you're staying by yourself, it doesn't talk about, guys has to cook or girls has to cook. It is like everyone needs to learn cooking.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, you can't just survive on the outside food all the time. So it's very, very important that you cook for yourself at least. It's another story whether, you can cook for yourself and feed others.
Mm-hmm.
Requires a lot of lot of things, but at least you should be able to take care of yourself and cook for yourself. So thank you so much for sharing, and we are moving towards our middle segment, which is more about fun or relaxation segment. And here we have a couple of keywords which are more or associated with your profile or the career, and you have to just tell me whatever comes to your mind. So it can be an abstract definition, it can be a replacement keyword, or if you want to come up with something creative after hearing all those three words, you can come up with those as well. So are you ready?
Mhm.
So the first keyword that we have is, we are talking a lot more about it, so health.
Yeah, health. I think the first word that comes to my mind is well-being. So not just that one aspect of physical health, like we think about a lot, but kind of the whole person health, the idea that it's made up of multiple components, different parts of our lives, and that, you know, at our peak of well-being, that those all are going to have some level of functioning that we hope to find there.
Yeah, nowadays it is most important actually that you take care of all the types of your health, like whether it's a physical or the mental. It's very, very important that you take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
So the second keyword that we have is diet.
Yeah. Actually, I think of this really funny situation that happened in the hospital. They would write the word diet on the wall and then say what kind of foods the patient had to eat. And this patient was like, they woke up and they didn't realize that they were in the hospital, and they saw the word diet, but they saw it as DIE with an arrow pointing at them. So it said die with an arrow pointing at them. And they were very distressed, obviously, because they thought that somebody wanted to kill them. And I just thought that was so interesting, because when we think of diets, like neutrally, a diet officially is just the collection of foods that we eat. It's very neutral. But when we talk about it, like culturally, a lot of people think a diet is something that you go on to be healthier, to lose weight, to do something, right? And not that losing weight and being healthy are the same thing. I don't think they are. So they see these things, but actually, when we're going on something that is like very restrictive, very rules-based, very you should and shouldn't eat these foods, we actually end up with worse outcomes than when we just let our own sense of satisfaction and bodies guide us through that process that I was talking about. And so if we're thinking of like long life, a diet is not the way to go for it.
Yeah.
You know, it's the opposite of that, actually. And so that's why I think, like, man, that is such a good example. But yeah, die with an arrow at you, like, that's not a good situation to be in.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. This is very interesting. And the third keyword that we have is happiness.
Actually, I think of yellow daisies. Daisies, or even just the white ones with the like bright yellow center. That flower, it's my favorite. It just makes me feel so happy. And they just like scream happiness and friendship and like joy, you know, just that simple pleasures kind of idea.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing it. And definitely it was very unique actually to hear from you on these specific keywords, which we definitely don't talk more often, because when we have a very busy life, day to day, nobody checks, right? How you are doing, how is your health, or how is your diet. Maybe just because of the pandemic nowadays, people are more careful about each other, and they take care of, like, by asking at least on the social front, like, how you're doing, or how is it going at your side, on the physical health or the mental health. But generally those are a lot more ignored words, I guess, in our day-to-day conversation, because it's very, very important that you show that care to the other person. And that definitely comes with the practice. Actually, if you learn to do that, then definitely you would be more careful when you talk to the other person, and give importance to that person as well, that where he stands on that current that point of time. So thank you so much for sharing. And moving towards our next segment, which is more about little more knowing you, so exploring your career work or volunteering. We have your favorite topic in this, which is practical self-care and food ideas to feel balanced, nourished, and energized even on busy days. I think this is very, very important nowadays, I guess, for this generation.
Yeah. And it is very important because a lot of times we don't realize that, we could feel a lot more energy throughout our day, and get things done a little faster if we actually nourish our bodies, right? Like sometimes we'll push through, we don't eat breakfast because we're in a rush. And then lunchtime, oh, we're in the middle of something, so we'll eat a little bit later. And then lunchtime comes and goes, and then it's almost time for dinner. So you don't want to eat something too close to dinner. And so then at dinner time, you eat like your entire day's worth of food all at once. Then you feel so uncomfortable, and then you don't sleep as well. And then you're not hungry in the morning because you ate so much food at night. And we just start that cycle all over again. But what else is happening during that time? We have like an afternoon slump of energy where we just can't think the same way. We're a little bit more irritable, all these things. Like we don't have the energy to do all the things we're rushing around trying to do. And so I think that taking care of ourselves, just thinking about it, like how I would take care of somebody I loved, right? And make sure that their needs were met. How would I take care of a pet that I loved? How do I want to take care of myself? It's the same question. Are we meeting our basic needs? Are we making sure that we're fed? And do we have enough water? Do we move enough today where we feel comfortable? Those kinds of questions. Do we get rest? Do we get some play? That is like those practical pieces that can be easily integrated, like only 10 minutes here and there, right? Or even smaller, like, did I take a break? Did I look away from the computer at all today? Did I even did I go to the toilet when I needed to go? Or did I try to hold it all day long because I was just trying to focus, those kinds of things. Like it's just the little practical things that we can do to remind ourselves that we're still living beings. We're not robots.
Yeah. That's very true, actually. And it's more about changing a little bit of habits as well. So for me, actually, is to just get away from the computers. I remember when I started my career, I started having this small bottle of water so that, every time it finishes, I will go and fill it up. That way I have to, get out of my seat and then go and fill it up. So I think that was also the practice that, I will purposely go away from the computer and I'll fill the water and make sure that I'll drink more bottles that day. So that is one of the ways, I guess. But definitely, as you mentioned, self-care is more important and it's more about practice, actually. So you have to practice it to get those habits in your day-to-day life. So thank you so much for sharing that. And we are moving towards little closure, and we have a second last segment, which is more about tips or advice. And here you can mention your, answer with books or courses as well. So we have the question, which is, any tips or advice would you like to give to the students or the professionals who are looking to get into this field and looking this as their long-term career option, like being a coach or the dietitian or the nutritionist?
Yeah, I would say that first off, as a coach or as a dietitian, there's plenty of career opportunities. So I think it's a really good field to go into or be interested in. I kind of mentioned before what I did, which was job shadowing and interviewing a bunch of people that had the jobs that I was interested in to see what it was like. What did I like or not like? What did they not like about it? Wow. And then also about their career path and their education, because I didn't know what was required to be a dietitian, and it varies from place to place. So you do have to look into that. So figuring out like, what are the requirements education-wise and certifications that I need in order to become, whatever it is that I want to be, right? Or whether it's a coach or dietitian. For me, I also got another certification in intuitive eating. And so that was separate after I already became a health professional. So, it's really like you can continue to move forward. So if you don't quite get it like perfectly right the first time, you can just keep adding to your education until you find something that does fit you and the work that you want to be doing. So I would say, just explore a little bit, because especially as a student, you have an opportunity that, a lot of professionals don't have, because you can ask questions in much more or less threatening. Like sometimes once you graduate, people will be like, oh, you're trying to take my job. But as a student, people don't care. They're like, oh, I want to help you. I want you to grow. So, I mean,
life,
always ask. Yeah.
might can find the better people to support you.
Hmm.
So that is definitely important point that you highlighted. And I really loved your approach actually. Like, earlier also I mentioned it that you went for the practical approach, like, actually understanding the field and whether it really interests you. And then after that, you did the certification as well. So it's very, very important actually that you understand what would be the roles and the responsibilities, like, what would be associated roles in that particular field, and then what would you like to do as a in that particular role. So once you get into that shoes, what kind of a responsibilities would you like to handle? And I think that is one of the practical ways that you have mentioned. So thank you so much for sharing. And we are moving towards our last segment, which is more about leadership. And definitely the way you are speaking, I can see more assertive side as well as, soft spoken skills. So you are leading your areas of expertise. So what is your leadership style and any specific leader that you always follow and admire, and why?
Um, um, so there's a lot of leaders like at the big famous level, right, that I follow and try to learn from. There's many in my personal life, like I'm sure you have as well, right? We all have people who influence us and teach us how to be leaders. My dad is one that comes to mind as far as like learning about what a leader does.
Mhm.
Like, he said a leader celebrates the success of the team and then also protects them. So if there's a failure on the team, he doesn't just throw them all under the bus, right? He
Mhm.
just like he protects them and kind of covers that mistake and leads that team to
Mhm.
improve rather than just like destroying the team. So I really like that kind of idea where there's safety in a team that's being led, where the leader is kind of like shepherding this group of people along. Um, and so I have these ideas like from my dad, from other people, that I want to be a leader. I don't know,
Uh-huh.
like I'm never sure if I'm actually achieving that or not. So I think it's good to ask for feedback. So I actually did. I asked my assistant when I got this question. I asked my assistant and I said, "Okay, what kind of leadership style do I have?" And she goes, "Well, you have a democratic and coaching style of leadership." And that I give her opportunities to learn and grow and succeed. And I think those are really important, and that they're things that I want to continue doing because I've been a part of teams where I've had a great chance to learn into a new area, to grow my career, where the leader was so invested in growing their people, even if that meant that eventually their team members would leave because they've outgrown that space.
Mhm.
But they were just so invested, and so they cared so much about advancing their career, not the leader's career, but the
Mhm.
people. Um, and that I just find that very inspiring. It's really fun to work with a leader who feels that way, and it makes you like motivated to do better, right?
Yeah.
To be a part of that team, and so I want to create that same space for other people.
Mhm. Wow, that's great actually. And definitely, those are the valuable qualities to have, any leader to have. And whoever found that, you have more of like a democratic and coaching approach, definitely, I can see it in you actually, because for coaching, I think it's very, very important that you have that convincing approach, that you can convince others and guide them in a proper way. So I can definitely see that in your communication style, because you are very convincing as well as you have a soft spoken skills. So you are very, yeah, so on that front, definitely I can see it, and definitely you are leading your areas of expertise. So once
Mhm.
again, thank you so much for being the guest on Solid Saturday. This is definitely a valued episode for us to learn more about health, nutrition, and the diet, so that people can be more healthy and happy in their lives. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. So this is all about Shelly and the way she is managing to lead her areas of expertise. Definitely, nutrition and health is the prior important thing when we think about our lives. So I'm going to close today's episode with a closure quote from Thomas Edison, which says, "The doctors of the future will no longer treat the human frame with drugs, but rather will cure and prevent disease with nutrition." So, on that quote, we are closing today's episode. See you guys in the next episode. Until we meet, happy leading. Let's lead together. Stay safe as well as stay healthy. Bye for now.